It has been said that the good is enemy of the best. Jesus himself, when he was teaching, reminded his hearers that something bigger and better than anything else was present among them in his person. Something greater, he said. In Matthew chapter 12, twice Jesus makes reference to the fact that something greater is among the people. The chapter begins with the Pharisees having a discussion with Jesus about his disciples, about their work and eating habits, and that they had been picking heads of grain in a field on the Sabbath, and that was against the law. Jesus responded by telling them the story of what David did with his followers about eating consecrated bread in the house of God. Jesus said this, verse 6 of Matthew 12, I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. In other words, Jesus is saying, as wonderful as all of your traditions are, as beautiful and gigantic as the temple itself is that you worship in, something greater than the temple is here, referring to himself. Even later, as Jesus approached his trial and crucifixion and death, he made the statement about tear this temple down in 3 days, it will be rebuilt, referring, of course, to his body being the temple. And yet again in this chapter, he refers again that something greater is here among the people when he talks about the Queen of the South who came and listened to the wisdom of Solomon. And he says in verse 22, something greater than Solomon is here. In a very strong, powerful way, Jesus is making the point that something great is among the people. He may even made the claim that he was the Lord of the Sabbath when the Pharisees had been bickering about Jesus and his disciples eating grains from the field on the Sabbath. Jesus also spoke often in this chapter, as he did in other chapters, about judgment. He talks about that we're even going to be judged by our careless words. Verse 36, and every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for it in the day of judgment. When he was talking about the Queen of the South coming to hear the wisdom of Solomon, he said the Queen of the South will rise up with this generation at the judgment. Previously to this statement, in verse 41, the men of Nineveh will stand up with this generation of the judgment. Jesus spoke then about judgment. He made the same statements in Matthew 7:28 and Matthew 10. Do not fear those who kill the body, but are able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. In this day and time, we don't like to talk about judgment. We sure don't like to talk about hell. But Jesus spoke about them both. Let me read just some of the statements of Jesus in this passage. Powerful statements. This, of course, is called Rod and Staff, the idea of taken from Psalm 23 of the great shepherd psalm, the shepherd who uses his rod and staff to lead, protect the sheep. Here in Matthew 12, verse 12, Jesus states, how much more valuable then is a man than sheep? People are more important than anything. Jesus reminds the Pharisees, that the kingdom of God has come upon you in verse 28. Verse 30 he says, he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. Verse 34, after he charges the Pharisees as being a brood of vipers, he says this, for the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. The mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. Listen carefully to what people speak about. Their topics, their conversation is based on what's in their heart. When garbage comes out of the mouth, it comes from the garbage that's in a person's heart. And then finally in this chapter, when Jesus' brothers and mother come to speak with Jesus, Jesus says this about who is his mother and who is his brothers. He says, verse 50, for whoever does the will of my Father who is in heaven, he is my brother and sister and mother. Jesus has reminded his disciples that something great is here among them. Both when the Pharisees charged them with working on the Sabbath, Jesus said something greater than the temple is here. When they thought about the wisdom of Solomon, he said something greater than Solomon is here. Also, when he referred to the men of Nineveh, he said, something greater than Jonah is here. Jesus, he's the best. He's the greatest.